The blood on Baek Junseo's white shirt wasn't his. He stood in the middle of the marble foyer of the Daesung penthouse, 68 floors above the Han River, and the only sound was the slow, deliberate drip of red onto Italian stone. 3 men lay at his feet. Behind him, the floor-to-ceiling window showed Seoul lit up like a circuit board, indifferent and beautiful. In front of him, the woman he had loved for 5 years stood in a black coat that was too thin for January, her braids damp with snow, her chest rising and falling like she'd run up every single flight. "Selah," he said. His voice was wrecked. "I told you not to come." "And I told you," Selah Whitmore answered, stepping over a body without looking at it, "that you don't get to decide for me anymore." He had a gun in his right hand, a phone in his left. The phone was still connected to a number he had been ready to call, a number that would have ended a man named Baek Hyun-chol, his own uncle, and every person who had ever helped him try to kill her. One press, that was all. One press and the war would be over, and Junseo would be the kind of monster his father had been, and Selah would never look at him the same way again. She walked toward him slowly, the way you approach an animal that's been hurt for a very long time. The diamond on her left hand caught the chandelier light. Not his diamond, her own. Bought with her own money from a jeweler in Harlem, the morning she decided she was done being anybody's secret. "Give me the phone, Junseo." "He tried to kill you." "I know. He's been trying to kill you for 2 years." "I know that too." "Then you understand." "I understand," she said, and her hand closed over his, gentle, gentle, "that if you press that button, you become him. And the man I came back for doesn't exist anymore." His fingers shook. Hers didn't. 5 years ago, this man had handed her an envelope of cash and asked her to pretend to be his girlfriend for 1 week. 5 years ago, she'd been a 23-year-old culinary student with $17 in her checking account and a mother in Brooklyn who needed dialysis. 5 years ago, she had said yes because she had to, and she had walked away because she was supposed to. Now she was the executive chef of the most talked-about restaurant in Manhattan. Now she had her own staff, her own apartment, her own name in the New York Times. And now she was standing in a Seoul penthouse with 3 dead men at her feet, holding the hand of a Mafia boss who had 300 soldiers and would burn down a city for her. She took the phone. She ended the call. "We do this my way now," she whispered. But to understand how Selah Whitmore ended up here, barefoot from the rooftop, wedding ring on her finger, talking a kingpin out of murder, we need to go back, all the way back, to a rainy October night in Seoul, to a girl with $17 and a question she didn't know how to answer. This story is for every woman who was ever told she should be grateful for the scraps, every daughter who paid the bill her father skipped out on, every black girl who walked into a room and felt the air change and decided to keep walking anyway. This story is for the ones who said yes when they should have said no, and the ones who said no when everyone else demanded a yes, for the ones who loved a man who couldn't love them out loud yet, for the ones who left him anyway, because love that hides you isn't love, it's storage. Before we go any further, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. Drop a comment and tell me one time you walked away from something that felt like love, because you finally understood what it actually was. I read every single one, and if this story moves you the way I'm about to tell it, share it with the woman in your life who needs to hear it tonight. Because here's the question I want you to hold while we tell this. The question Selah Whitmore had to answer the hard way, twice, 5 years apart. What is your dignity worth in cash? And when somebody finally offers you that number, what happens to the woman who said yes? Now, let's go back to Seoul, October 2020, Itaewon at 2 a.m. Rain coming down in that fine, mean way Seoul rain has, where it doesn't soak you so much as wear you down. Selah Whitmore was on her hands and knees behind the line at a French-Korean fusion restaurant called Maison Gille, scrubbing the underside of a flat top with a brush that had lost most of its bristles. Her shift had ended at midnight. The owner, a wiry man named Mr. O, who pronounced her name Selah no matter how many times she corrected him, had told her she could go home when the kitchen sparkled. The kitchen never sparkled. That was the joke. That was always the joke. She was 23 years old. She had been in South Korea for 14 months on a partial culinary scholarship at Le Cordon Bleu d'Ossane. Partial meant tuition. Partial did not mean rent, food, transit, books, knives, uniforms, or the $400 a month she wired home to her mother in Bed-Stuy, so that Lorraine Whitmore could afford the copay on dialysis 3 times a week. To cover the rest, Selah worked the dinner shift at Maison Gill 5 nights a week. On weekends, she ran prep at a bakery in Hongdae from 4 a.m. to 11. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, her only days without school, she taught English to a banker's son in Gangnam for cash. She slept, on a good week, 4.5 hours a night. On a bad week, she slept on the subway between Itaewon and her Goshiwon in Sinchon, and the security guard at her building would wake her up at the front door because she'd dozed off trying to find her key. She was tired in a way that had stopped being a feeling and started being a structure. Tired was the building her life was made out of. But she could cook. God, she could cook. She had hands her grandmother used to call knowing hands, the kind that learned a recipe once and remembered it forever. Her braised oxtail had made a Michelin instructor cry into his sleeve and then pretend it was the steam. Her gumbo, the one her father had taught her when she was 11, before he left, was the first thing she had ever cooked that made her understand that food could be a love letter you wrote to people who weren't in the room anymore. Her father, Marcus Whitmore. He'd left when Selah was 12 and her brother Trey was 9, and he had taken with him the part of her mother that knew how to laugh in the kitchen. Lorraine had picked up double shifts at Kings County and stopped buying herself anything that wasn't on sale. And one morning when Selah was 15, she found her mother crying in front of the open refrigerator because there was nothing in it she could afford to cook into something good. That was the day Selah decided she was going to feed her mother properly for the rest of her life. That was the day the lie started. The lie was this: if she worked hard enough, sacrificed enough, gave enough of herself away, the universe would balance the books. Her mother would get well, her brother would stay out of trouble, the men in her life would stop disappearing. The world would be fair, eventually, if she paid the entry fee in pieces of her own body. She had been paying that fee for 11 years. She was paying it now, behind the line at Maison Gill, with her braids tied up in a bandana and her knees aching against tile, when the back door of the kitchen banged open, and a man walked in like he owned the building. Maybe because he did. He was tall. That was the first thing. 6'1", 6'2", in a charcoal suit that had been cut for him by somebody who had measured him 3 times. Black hair pushed back off a forehead that did not believe in apology. Late 20s. The kind of jawline you only get from genetics and discipline. He had a bruise blooming under his right eye, a split lip, and a thin line of dried blood at his collarbone where someone had clipped him with something sharp. He stopped when he saw her on the floor. "Where is Mr. O?" he said in Korean. "Gone home," she answered in Korean. Her Korean was good, better than good. She had spent 2 years drilling it before she ever applied to the school. "Back tomorrow at 10. He looked at her for a long second. There was something in his face she could not name yet, the recognition a hawk has for a kind of weather it knows is coming. Then his eyes went past her, to the back office, and the way they went made her stand up. "Sir," she said, "you can't go back there." He paused. He turned. He looked at her properly for the first time, and she watched his expression shift into something almost like surprise, then into something almost like amusement, then into something completely unreadable, which she would later learn was his default. "You're not Korean," he said in English. American English, almost without accent. Better than hers in some ways, with the same private school polish her teachers at Spence had on Parents' Night. "Neither are you," she said. "Not entirely." His mouth twitched. "Mr. O owes me a conversation." "Mr. O owes everybody a conversation. Come back tomorrow." He looked at her. She looked at him. The clock on the wall ticked. "What is your name?" he asked. "Selah." "Selah." He repeated it carefully. He got it right the first time. "Selah, I'm going to ask you a strange question. Do you have plans next week?" She laughed, out loud. She couldn't help it. "Sir," she said, "I have $17. I have nothing but plans." He smiled, tiny, almost reluctant. "Then I would like," he said, "to make you an offer." And that was how Baek Jun-seo, heir to the Daesung Group, a name she did not yet know enough to be terrified of, walked into Selah Whitmore's life through the back door of a kitchen at 2:14 a.m. on the night her mother's insurance company in Brooklyn was about to deny coverage for the third time that year. She did not know any of that yet. She knew only that her knees hurt, that her tip jar contained 4,001, and that this man was looking at her like she was a door he hadn't known was there. She wiped her hands on her apron. "Talk fast," she said. "I still have to finish the grill." He talked fast. His name was Baek Jun-seo. He was 28 years old. He was the only son of Baek Sung-ho, chairman of an investment holding company called Daesung Capital, and Selah, who read the Korea Herald every morning to practice, recognized the name. Daesung had its hands in shipping, hotels, construction, entertainment, the kind of conglomerate that the Korean papers called a mid-tier chaebol, with the careful tone reporters used when they were afraid of being sued. What the Korea Herald did not print, but what every Seoul cab driver knew, was that the Baek family money had not started clean. It had started in the docks at Busan in the 1970s, with a man named Baek Tae-young, who controlled the movement of certain goods through certain ports for certain people, and it had moved upstairs over 3 generations into glass towers and golf memberships. The polite word for what they were now was conglomerate. The accurate word was something Selah didn't have yet. She didn't need the accurate word that night. She only needed his offer. The offer was this. In 9 days, his father was hosting a 60th birthday gala at the Seoul Hotel. 300 guests, the chairman of every major bank in Seoul, 3 sitting members of the National Assembly, and, this was the point, the Han family. Specifically, Han Yura, the only daughter of Han Jung-pil, the chairman of Hansong Securities, whom Jun-seo's father had been quietly informing the world for 2 years, would be marrying Jun-seo by spring. Jun-seo had no intention of marrying Han Yura. Han Yura had no intention of marrying Jun-seo. Their fathers had decided this without consulting either of them, which was how things were still done in the rooms where their fathers ate dinner. "I need a girlfriend," Jun-seo said. He was leaning against the prep counter now, arms folded. "Visible, public, American. Someone my father cannot pretend not to see. Someone the Hans cannot pretend not to notice. Someone, frankly, that none of them will know what to do with." "You want a black girlfriend to embarrass your father in front of the in-laws," Selah translated. He didn't flinch. "I want a girlfriend," he corrected, "who exists for me, not for them. I'm explaining the strategic context. I'm not pretending it's romantic." "Why not just tell him no?" "I have, 6 times. The 7th time he had me followed for a month." She let that sit. "How long?" she asked. 1 week, starting Friday. You stay at my place in Hannum. You come to the gala. You come to one dinner with my mother. You come to a charity auction at the National Museum on Tuesday. You smile. You hold my hand. You let people photograph us. At the end of the week, we have a small, public, unambiguous fight, and you fly home to whichever city you would like to be flown home to. Or you stay. I don't care. The weekend's Friday. And you pay me." "I pay you," he said. 50,000 US, wired to the account of your choice, half on Friday, half the following Friday, no matter what happens." She stopped breathing. $50,000 was her mother's dialysis for 2 years. $50,000 was tuition through graduation with money left over. $50,000 was the bridge between the life she was killing herself to build and the one she was killing herself inside. It was also, and she knew this immediately because she was not stupid, the kind of money that meant whatever this man actually was, he was something more than a chaebol son with a marriage problem. 50,000 for a week of hand-holding was not a prize. It was a silencer. It was the number you paid someone so that whatever else they saw during that week, they would never repeat. She looked at him. "What aren't you telling me?" He smiled. It was the first real smile she had seen out of him. Tired, honest, surprisingly young. "You're smarter than the last 3, he said. "There were 3? "There were 6. The last 3 were the ones who almost said yes." "Why didn't they?" "Because I told them what I'm about to tell you and they ran." He stepped closer. Not threatening, just present. The kitchen was very small and very quiet, and the rain had picked up against the high windows. "My family," he said, "is not just a conglomerate. We have other businesses, older ones, the kind that don't appear on a tax return. The week you spend with me will be in public, in safe places, with security around you that you will not see. But if you take this money, you will be on a list. Photographs of you will exist. People in rooms you will never enter will know your face. The risk is not 0, it is small, but it is not 0. And the women who said no, they said no because I refused to lie about that." She stared at him. She thought about her mother. She thought about Trey, working the overnight at a UPS warehouse in Maspeth, so he could take community college during the day. She thought about her own hands, raw from bleach, and the way her knee had clicked when she stood up. She thought about the lie she had been carrying for 11 years. Sacrifice yourself. The universe will balance the books. And she thought, very clearly, for the first time in her life, the universe is not going to balance anything. The only person who is going to balance my mother's books is me. 1 week, she said. Public only. Separate bedrooms. I keep my job at the bakery. I finish my semester. If at any point you ask me for anything that wasn't in this conversation, I walk. I keep the half you've already paid, and you don't follow." "Agreed." "Why me?" she asked finally. "Out of every woman in this city." He looked at her for a long, long second. Then he said something that would take her 5 years to understand. "Because you didn't ask me who I was," he said. "You told me to come back tomorrow." He extended his hand. She wiped hers on her apron one more time. She shook it. And in the back kitchen of Maison Gill at 2:41 a.m., with the rain coming down on Itaewon and her tip jar holding 4,001, and her future bending at an angle she had not yet learned to see, Selah Whitmore made the deal. She did not know yet that she had just shaken hands with the next boss of the largest organized crime family in South Korea. She would find out on Thursday. Thursday was the night Selah was supposed to meet Junseo's mother, Madame Baek Soo-yeon. A small woman, Junseo had warned her, who collected antique celadon and had once, allegedly, fired the chief of staff of a sitting prime minister because he sent her white peonies instead of pink. Selah had spent her tuition refund on a navy dress at Galleria and 3 pearl earrings she could not afford, and a manicure that made her hands look like they belonged to a different woman. The dinner was at 7. At 4:30, she was standing in the closet of Junseo's apartment in Hanam, 52nd floor, 2 bedrooms, view of the Namsan Tower, when she found the gun, not in a drawer, not in a safe, in the inside breast pocket of the suit jacket Junseo had left over the back of a chair when he'd gone to take a call on the balcony. She had been hanging it up, that was all. She had been being polite. The jacket had been crumpled, and she had a thing about wrinkled silk, and her hand had brushed the inside pocket and felt the shape of something hard and angular and absolutely not a phone. She froze. For a long second, she stood in that closet with her hand still inside the pocket, and she could hear Junseo on the balcony laughing at something somebody had said on the other end of the line, and she could see her own face in the mirror at the end of the closet, the navy dress, the pearls, the manicure, and she thought very calmly, "Selah, get your hand out of his coat." She got her hand out of his coat. She walked into the kitchen. She poured herself a glass of cold barley tea from the fridge and drank the entire thing without breathing. Then she walked onto the balcony. He turned. He saw her face. He said something to the phone in fast, low Korean and hung up. "You said the businesses your family has are not on the tax return," she said. Her voice was very level. She was proud of it later. "You did not say you carry a gun to dinner with your mother." He looked at her for a long second. He set the phone on the patio table. He did not lie. That was the thing about him she would remember later, when there were many other things to remember. He did not, in that moment, lie. "There has been a complication," he said. What complication? My uncle. He took a breath. My father's younger brother, Baek Hyun-chul. He runs the part of the business that is not on the tax return. He has been running it for 15 years on the understanding that when my father retires, control passes to him, not to me. And now? And now my father has decided, last month, that he wants me to inherit both halves, the clean and the not clean. He told my uncle 3 weeks ago. He exhaled. My uncle did not take it well. How not well? 2 attempts. The first one was a car. The second one was a man on a motorcycle in Cheongdam 2 days ago. He gestured at the bruise under his eye, fading now to yellow. I'm telling you because you deserve to know. I'm also telling you because I want to ask you to leave tonight. Leave the week. Leave the week. Leave Seoul if you want. I'll wire you the full 50 either way. I'll wire you 100 if it helps. The risk I told you about on Tuesday is no longer the risk that exists today. Today there is a man who wants me dead and would be delighted, frankly, to use the American girlfriend as the headline. She stared at him. She stared at the city behind him. She stared at the gun-shaped wrinkle in the jacket she had hung up. She stared at the future she had bought with her handshake on Tuesday, and saw, for the first time, the actual shape of what she had agreed to. Why didn't you cancel? She said. Why didn't you call me and say, Selah, don't come? He looked at her. The wind off the river moved his hair. Because I wanted to see you again, he said, and I knew if I called, you would not pick up. The honesty of it hit her in the sternum. She turned around. She walked back into the apartment. She sat on the white leather of the sofa in her navy dress with her hands flat on her knees, and she thought about her mother, about dialysis, about $50,000, about a gun. She thought about the lie. Sacrifice yourself. The universe will balance the books. She thought about her father, who had left, and her mother, who had stayed, and the bill that had never been paid by anybody other than her. Junseo came in from the balcony. He stood in the doorway. He did not come closer. You can leave right now, he said. There is a car downstairs. The driver is mine. He will take you to Incheon. There is a ticket in your name for any city you want. I'll wire the rest tonight. She looked up at him. What happens to you, she said, if I leave? He almost laughed. That is the wrong question. It's my question. He was silent for a long moment. If you leave, he said, tomorrow my uncle's people will assume I am alone. They will move. Possibly Friday. Possibly Saturday at the gala. They will not move tonight because they are still photographing you. And as long as you are with me, they are still gathering information. So I'm a delay. You are the reason they hesitate. Yes. And if I stay until Friday. If you stay until Friday, I have 1 more week to consolidate. And after Friday, I can move you somewhere safe. New York, London, wherever your mother needs you to be. I will pay for her care for the rest of her life. That is not a bribe. That is what I will do, regardless of whether you stay tonight. She looked at him. She thought about her own knees on the floor at Maison Gill 3 nights ago. She thought about how she had stood up to tell a stranger he could not go into the back office. She thought about how that one sentence had cost her $17 and bought her this navy dress, this gun, this man. She stood up. She smoothed the dress. Let's go meet your mother, she said. He stared at her. Selah, you promised me public only. You promised me separate bedrooms. You promised me I could walk on Friday. She picked up her clutch. I'm walking on Friday, but I'm not walking tonight. Don't make me say that again. He looked at her like she had just rewritten a sentence he had memorized. He nodded once. They went to dinner. His mother loved her. His uncle, 3 days later, tried to kill them both. The attempt came on Sunday night. Not at the gala, not at the museum. On a residential side street in Seongbuk, when they were leaving the home of an old friend of Junseo's mother, where they had been served handmade dumplings and barley tea, and the kind of conversation that was meant to ratify Selah's existence to the female half of the Baek clan, 2 SUVs, one in front, one behind. Junseo's driver, a tank of a man named Min-gi, had 30 seconds of warning because he was paid to have it. The next 10 minutes, Selah did not remember in order. She remembered the sound. She remembered Junseo putting his entire body between hers and the window. She remembered Min-gi reversing into a wall on purpose to flip an SUV that was trying to come up the driver's side. She remembered later that 2 of Junseo's people died that night and 1 of his uncle's people did, and that the police report listed it as a traffic incident involving an unidentified second party, which she would, over the next 5 years, learn was how Seoul wrote certain sentences down. She remembered, most of all, sitting in the back of a different car an hour later, in a parking garage under a building she did not know the name of, with Junseo's blood on her dress because he had cut his hand on glass, and him telling her, very quietly, that she had to leave the country in the morning. "I'm not leaving," she said. "Selah, I am not leaving without finishing what I came here for." He stared at her. She was 23 years old, and she was shaking, and her ears were ringing from gunfire she had not known was gunfire until it stopped, and she meant every word. "I came to Seoul to finish culinary school," she said. "My mother is on dialysis in Brooklyn. I have 2 semesters left. If I leave now, my visa lapses, and I lose the scholarship, and I have to start over in New York at a school I can't afford. I am not going home with 1 piece of paper less than I came for." He closed his eyes. "Then we make a different deal," he said. This is the part of the story that nobody outside that parking garage knew until 5 years later, when it came out in pieces during a federal trial in the Southern District of New York. The deal was this: he would not ask her to stay as his girlfriend. The week was over. Friday was Friday. The $50,000 would be wired, but he would put her under protection. Quiet, professional protection. A woman named Park Yoonbi, who would pose as a culinary school classmate and rent the apartment next to Selah's Goshiwon. Selah would not see most of the protection. She would see Yoonbi, who would become, over the next 18 months, the closest friend Selah had ever had. He would set up an LLC in Delaware in Selah's name. Into it, he would deposit, over the next 2 years, $800,000. Money he had been holding for years from a sale he had made of his maternal grandmother's apartment in Apgujeong. Money his uncle did not know about. Money that could not be traced back to Daesung. Selah would not touch it for 2 years. After that, it would be hers, free, with one condition. She would never tell anyone where it came from. He would pay for her mother's dialysis directly, through a charitable trust she had never heard of, that would, 6 months later, be the reason Selah Whitmore got a transplant from a donor list Selah had not even known existed. In exchange for all of that, he asked for one thing. "Don't write to me," he said. "Don't call. Don't reach out. Not in 2 years. Not in 5. Finish your degree. Build the kitchen you've been telling me about for 9 days. Get free, Selah. Get all the way free. And when you are, if you are, and only if my uncle is no longer the obstacle he is now, I will find you. I will not assume you want to be found. I will find you, and I will ask. And you will be free to say no, with everything I gave you still yours." She stared at him. The garage was very quiet. There was a smell of motor oil and her own perfume and his blood. "That's not a partnership," she said. "That's an exile." "It's a runway," he answered. "I'm giving you a runway. So that whatever you decide in 5 years, you decide it from solid ground, not from a kitchen at 2 a.m. with a tip jar." She thought about the lie. Sacrifice yourself. The universe will balance the books. She thought for the first time in 11 years. No, I balance them, with both hands, with my eyes open. "I want it in writing," she said. "You can't have it in writing." "Then I want you to look me in the face and swear it." He looked her in the face. He swore it. "And I want one more thing," she said. "Anything." "If you find me," she said, "in 5 years or 10 or however long, you will not be the man I met in that kitchen. You will be someone who is chosen, because right now you're inheriting your father's mess and your uncle's mess and pretending it's a destiny. I'm not interested in a destiny. I'm interested in a man who chose. Do you understand the difference?" He was silent for a very long time. "Yes," he said finally. "I understand the difference. Then go fix it, and I'll go finish school, and we'll see what we're each made of." She got out of the car. She walked across the parking garage in her ruined dress. She did not look back because she knew if she did, she would not be able to do any of it. That was the choice. That was the moment Selah Whitmore stopped being a girl who paid the bill and became a woman who set the terms. 5 years began that night. The first 6 months were the hardest. Not because of the money. The money started arriving exactly when he said it would, in a slow, careful drip into the Delaware LLC, never enough to flag a bank, always enough to matter. Not because of school. She crushed school. She graduated top of her class in June 2021, and the chef who had once cried into his sleeve over her oxtail wrote her a recommendation letter that opened doors in 3 cities. The first 6 months were the hardest, because she had to learn to live without him. She had not known, until he was gone, how much of her interior weather he had been controlling. The mornings she woke up and reached for her phone before she remembered. The nights at the Goshiwon when Park Yoonbi made her instant ramyeon at 11 p.m., and Selah almost, asked her to deliver a message. The day a man in a black coat passed her on the street in Seoul, and her entire body went cold, because for 1 second, one ridiculous second, she thought it was him. She did not write. She did not call. She held the line. She came back to New York in August 2021 with a culinary diploma, $800,000 she could not touch yet, and a mother who, by then, had received a kidney from a donor whose name was redacted on the paperwork. Lorraine Whitmore met her at JFK in a wheelchair she would not need by Christmas. They cried in the International Arrivals Hall like the kind of people who do not care who is watching. The first year in New York, Selah worked the line at a restaurant in the West Village called Ferment, sous chef by 10 months, promoted past 2 men with more years and louder mouths. The chef owner, a Korean-American woman named Ju-eun Park, looked at her hands one night and said, "Where did you train these?" And Selah said, "Seoul?" And Ju-eun said, "I can tell. Show me everything." Year 2, she opened a pop-up in Bed-Stuy with her brother Trey running the front of house. They called it Lorraine's, after their mother. They served oxtail, gumbo, kimchi jjigae. Her grandmother would not have recognized, but would have respected. The Times reviewed them in October. 2 stars. The reviewer used the word audacious. Trey cried in the walk-in. Selah did not, because she was already thinking about the next location. Year 3, the LLC released. $800,000 dropped into her account on a Tuesday morning in October. She did not spend it that week. She did not spend it that month. She sat with it. Then, in November, she got a phone call. Not from him, from a lawyer. A woman in Midtown named Anita Beauchamp, who said she had been retained by a third party to inform Ms. Whitmore that a civil suit was about to be filed against her in the matter of Hanyura versus Selah Whitmore, alleging tortious interference, defamation, and a list of other things that translated, in plain English, to "The woman whose arranged marriage you wrecked 4 years ago has decided to make you pay for it." Selah hired Beauchamp on the spot. "This isn't really about you," Beauchamp said. They were sitting in her office on 47th Street, full wall of windows, the Chrysler Building staring at them through the glass. "This is about a man named Baek Hyun-cheol. He's been laundering money through Han Family Holdings for years, and a federal indictment in Manhattan is about to drop. The Hans are trying to muddy the water before it lands. You are convenient. Your restaurant is convenient. Your face is convenient." "My face. You're a black woman who opened a Korean fusion restaurant in Brooklyn after dating a Chaebol heir for 1 week 5 years ago. That's a tabloid headline before it's a lawsuit. They want you on the front of every Korean-language paper in Queens by January." Selah looked at her. "What do you need from me?" "I need to know," Beauchamp said carefully, "if there is anything in your past with Baek Jun-seo that they could use." Selah thought about a parking garage in Seongbuk. She thought about a Delaware LLC. She thought about a gun in a closet. She told Beauchamp everything. Everything. Beauchamp listened. Beauchamp took notes. Beauchamp set her pen down at the end and said, "Selah, you're not the defendant in this story. You're a witness. And if you're willing to be one, in the federal case that's about to drop, we can end Baek Hyun-cheol's career before he ends yours." "What does that mean for Jun Seo?" "That depends," Beauchamp said, "on which side of the indictment he's on." Selah sat with that. She thought about a man on a balcony saying, "I wanted to see you again." She thought about 5 years of silence, kept faithfully on both sides. She thought about her mother, who was alive because of him, and her restaurant, which was hers because of her. She picked up her phone. She did not call him. She called the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Southern District of New York. She left her name and Beauchamp's number. If you're still with me, drop a comment with one word: receipts. Because what Selah did next, what she walked into and walked back out of, is the part of this story I want you to remember the longest. Hit subscribe if you haven't. We are not done. She walked into the federal building on St. Andrew's Plaza on a Tuesday morning in December, in a coat she had bought herself, and she became, that day, a cooperating witness in United States versus Baek Hyun-cheol et al. She did not tell Jun Seo. She did not have to. Because 72 hours later, in Seoul, his uncle was arrested at Incheon trying to board a flight to Vancouver, and the next morning Baek Jun Seo, age 33, looked at a television in his office on the 48th floor of the Daesung Tower and saw, on a screen behind a Korean newscaster, a photograph of an American woman walking into a courthouse in Lower Manhattan in a long camel coat. He smiled. For the first time in 5 years, he smiled. She had not waited. She had moved. He picked up the phone. He did not call her. He called her lawyer. The trial took 11 months. Federal trials of foreign nationals on RICO predicates do not move quickly. Baek Hyun-cheol's lawyers, 3 of them, all of them American, all of them charging more per hour than Selah had earned in her first year at Maisongil, tried every delay tactic in the book. They tried to have the case moved to Korea. Denied. They tried to have Selah's testimony excluded as hearsay. Denied. They tried, in their most desperate move, to subpoena every financial record of the Lorraine LLC for the past 5 years, and presented as evidence that Selah had been a paid agent of the Baek family all along. That one almost worked. Until Beauchamp put Selah on the stand, and Selah, in a blue suit and her grandmother's small gold cross, told the entire courtroom, in plain English, what the $800,000 had been for, and what she had agreed to in exchange, and what she had not agreed to. "He paid me," Selah said, "to walk away. He paid me a runway. He did not pay me to lie. He did not pay me for sex. He did not pay me to do anything other than build my own life, on my own terms, with my hands. Which I did. Which is what I have done. Which is what I will continue to do, whether this verdict goes my way or not." The prosecutor, a woman named Adaize Okonkwo, looked at the jury when Selah said that. The jury looked at Selah. The defense had no further questions. The verdict came down on a Friday afternoon in October 2025. Guilty on 12 of 14 counts. Conspiracy, wire fraud, money laundering. Conspiracy to commit murder for the events of October 2020 in Seongbuk, including the 2 men in Jun Seo's car. Baek Hyun-cheol, age 61, was sentenced to 28 years in federal prison. His 3 lieutenants got 15 each. Selah sat in the gallery in the same camel coat she had worn to the U.S. Attorney's Office 11 months earlier. Her mother was on her left. Trey was on her right. Park Yunbi, who had flown in from Seoul 2 weeks before the verdict, was directly behind her with a hand on her shoulder. Jun Seo was not in the courtroom. He could not be. He had testified by video deposition 6 months earlier, from a secure room in Seoul, under a cooperation agreement with the DOJ that had cost him his uncle's half of the family business and earned him, in exchange, full legal control of the clean half. He had voluntarily divested from every business operation that had ever appeared on the not tax return side of the ledger. He had paid $140 million in restitution, including direct payments to the families of the men who had died in Seongbuk. He had taken the Daisung name off 3 companies and renamed them after his mother. He had, in other words, chosen. The press waited for Selah on Pearl Street. They wanted a quote. They wanted a soundbite. They wanted to know whether the black American chef who had brought down a Korean crime boss had any final words. She gave them 5. "I cooked my way here," she said. Then she walked through them, through cameras, through microphones, through a reporter from the Korea Herald who tried to grab her elbow and was very politely removed by Park Yoon-bi, and got into a black SUV that took her home to Bed-Stuy, where her mother had a pot of oxtail on the stove that she had insisted on making herself. That night, Lorraine Whitmore looked at her daughter across the kitchen table and said, "Baby, you did that." Selah said, "We did that." Lorraine said, "No, ma'am. I made it through dialysis. You did that. Say it." Selah said it. She said, "I did that." It was the first time in her life she had said those 3 words and meant them. It was the first emotional payoff of the rest of her life. In Seoul, at 3 a.m. local time, Baek Jun-seo sat alone on the balcony of an apartment in Hanam, a different apartment, smaller, with no glass cabinets and no jacket on a chair, and read the verdict on his phone. He did not call her. He had not called her in 5 years and 1 month. He poured himself a glass of his grandfather's last bottle of whiskey, and he toasted alone to a woman in Brooklyn who had freed them both. Then he sent one text, not to her, to Beauchamp. It said, "Tell her I'm ready when she is." She was not ready. Not yet. The week after the verdict, a man named Marcus Whitmore walked into Lorraine's at 5 p.m. on a Tuesday before service. Selah was at the pass, going over the night's menu with her sous chef. She did not look up immediately. She heard the door. She heard her hostess Imani say, "Sir, we open at 6. And she heard a voice she had not heard in 17 years say, "I'm here to see my daughter." She went very still. She put down the pen. She looked up. He looked smaller than she remembered. Of course he did. She had been 12. He was 62 now, and his hair had gone gray at the temples, and he was wearing a tan jacket that was too thin for November, and shoes that had been resoled at least once. He held his hands in front of him, the way men hold their hands when they're trying to remember what they used to do with them. "Selah," he said. She did not move from behind the pass. "Daddy." She had not called anybody daddy in 17 years. The word felt strange in her mouth, like something she had borrowed and forgotten to return. He looked around the restaurant, the exposed brick, the Edison bulbs, the small framed photograph on the back wall of Lorraine Whitmore at her own kitchen table in Bed-Stuy in 1992, laughing at something off camera. "This is yours," he said. "This is mine. I read about it. In the Daily News. I read about the trial, too." She waited. "I came," he said, "because I wanted to tell you I'm proud of you. And because, Selah, look, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm in a tough spot. I've been in Atlanta. Things didn't work out. I came back up to be closer to family, and I was hoping we could talk." She knew what talk meant. She had known what talk meant from the second he said daughter. "Talk about what, Daddy?" "I just need a leg up, baby. A little something to get me started. I saw the trial coverage. I know you came into some resources. I'm not asking for much. I'm asking for what a father, for what we could have built if I'd done it different. I'm asking you to help me do it different now." The kitchen was very quiet. Imani was staring at her shoes. The sous chef had stopped pretending to read the menu. Selah came out from behind the pass. She walked over to her father slowly. She stopped 2 feet from him. She looked at him. She thought about the lie. "Sacrifice yourself. The universe will balance the books." She thought about a girl on the floor of a kitchen at 2 a.m. in Seoul, scrubbing a flat top. She thought about her mother in front of an open refrigerator, crying because there was nothing inside it she could afford to cook into something good. She thought about Jun-seo, who had given her a runway and not a destination, who had asked for nothing back, who had waited 5 years in silence because he understood, in a way her father did not, that love that demands the loved one shrink is not love. It is storage. "Daddy," she said, I am going to feed you." He looked up. "I am going to feed you tonight. You sit at table 4. The kitchen will send you the tasting menu. On the house. You eat slowly. You enjoy it. You tell me what you think of the gumbo, because you taught me, and I want you to taste what I made of what you gave me." He started to smile. "But I am not going to give you money. Not tonight, not next week, not ever." The smile stopped. "Selah, I am not your retirement. I am not your insurance. I am not the bill you skipped out on coming due. I am your daughter, and the only thing I owe you is the truth, which is that I love you and I forgive you, and I will not be funding the next 17 years of a man who did not fund the last 17 of mine." He stared at her. "You hard girl." "No, sir," she said. "I'm whole. There's a difference. And if you ever want to know me, actually know me, you start by sitting at that table and eating what I cooked and saying thank you, not by asking for a check." He looked at her for a long time. Then, slowly, he nodded. He sat at table 4. The kitchen sent him the tasting menu. He ate slowly. When he got to the gumbo, he closed his eyes. He took a long breath. He set his spoon down. He said to no one in particular, "Lord, she got it. She got it exactly." When he left, 2 hours later, he hugged her. He did not ask again. He kissed her forehead. He walked out into the cold. She did not know if she would see him again, but she had not bought him, and she had not lost him to the buying. That, she understood now, was the difference between love and storage. She went back to the pass. She picked up her pen. She finished the menu. Service was at 6. The James Beard nomination came in March. Best Chef, New York City. Selah Whitmore, age 29, of Lorraine's Bed-Stuy. She was the youngest nominee on the list. She was the only black woman. She was the only chef in the category whose restaurant had under 30 seats. She read the announcement on her phone at 7:14 a.m. in her own kitchen, in her own apartment, in a building she had bought outright the previous October with the last of the LLC money plus 18 months of Lorraine's profits. And she put the phone down and stared at the cabinets she had picked out herself. And she cried for the first time about something good. The award ceremony was in June at the Lyric Opera House in Chicago. She wore emerald green. She wore her grandmother's gold cross. She wore her own diamond, the one she had bought herself at the jeweler in Harlem the morning before the ceremony, because she had decided she was tired of waiting for somebody else to put a ring on her hand, to mark that she was loved. She loved herself. The ring was for that. She did not win. The award went to a man who had been cooking for 20 years and absolutely deserved it. She clapped. She meant it. She went back to the after-party and ate a piece of cake with him, and they exchanged numbers and would, 6 months later, collaborate on a Lunar New Year tasting menu that would be on the cover of Bon Appetit. She did not win, but she had been there. She had been named. She had stood in a room with the chefs whose cookbooks she had stolen from the Park Slope Library as a teenager, and they had known her name, and one of them, a woman she had idolized since she was 19, had pulled her aside at the bar and said, "Don't let it bother you. You've got 10 more nominations in you. I'd put money on it." Selah said thank you. Selah meant it. She flew home on a Tuesday morning. She walked into Lorraine's at 11 a.m. for prep. Her mother was already there, sitting at the bar in her good blue cardigan, drinking coffee, reading the Times. "Mama, what are you doing here?" "I came to see my daughter," Lorraine said, "who got nominated for a James Beard." "I didn't win." "Child," Lorraine said, "I don't care." Selah laughed. She came around the bar. She kissed her mother on the top of her head. "Sit," Lorraine said. "Drink coffee. Tell me about Chicago." She sat. She drank coffee. She told her mother about Chicago. Halfway through the second cup, her phone buzzed. It was Bosham. The text said, "He's in town. He'd like to see you. He's asking, not telling. Your call." Selah read it. She put the phone down. Her mother watched her. "Who?" Lorraine said. Selah looked at her mother for a long second. She had never told Lorraine the entire story. Lorraine knew about the kidney. Lorraine knew about the trust. Lorraine had testified in the trial herself, briefly, about her medical care. Lorraine had also raised a daughter she could read like a recipe. "Mama," Selah said, "it's him." Lorraine smiled, slowly. "And how do you feel?" Lorraine said. Selah thought about it, honestly, with both hands. "I feel," she said, "like I want to see him, from where I stand now, not from where I stood then." "Then go see him," Lorraine said, "from where you stand." Selah picked up the phone. She wrote back to Beauchamp. She said, "Tell him 8 p.m. Lorraine's. He sits at the bar. He waits his turn." She put the phone down. She went to prep. She did not change clothes. She did not put on different makeup. She wore the apron she had been wearing since she opened the door at 11. When he walked in at 7:58 p.m., she was at the pass. She did not look up. She let him sit at the bar. She let him wait his turn. She was, finally and entirely, the woman she had spent 5 years becoming. He waited an hour and 17 minutes. He ordered the gumbo. He ate it slowly. He ordered a glass of the Riesling she had recommended on the chalkboard. He did not ask for her. He did not signal her. He sat at the corner of the bar, and he watched her work the pass with an expression Imani would later describe as, like a man at an art museum who has finally found the one painting. At 9:15, she came out from behind the pass. She took off her apron. She folded it on the bar next to him. She sat down on the stool to his left. He turned. He looked at her. He had aged. Not badly. The line of his jaw had hardened. His hair had a thread of silver above the left ear. He was 33 years old, and he was wearing a charcoal suit, and he did not, she noticed, have a bruise anywhere on his face. "Hello, Selah," he said. "Hello, Junseo." The bar was nearly empty. The kitchen was closing down. Imani had, with great discretion, vanished into the wine room. He looked at her hand. He saw the ring. He did not flinch. "That's beautiful," he said. "I bought it for myself. I assumed." She almost smiled. "You testified," she said. "You testified first." "I testified," she said, "because I was a witness. You testified because you chose." He nodded. "I chose," he said. "I divested. I closed the operations my uncle ran. I am, by Korean law and by my own conscience, a businessman now. Not the other thing. I will be, until I die, the son of the man who built the other thing. I cannot change that, but I am not it. Not anymore. I wanted you to know that from my own mouth. I know. I also wanted you to know," he said, "that I did not come to ask you for anything. I came to thank you. You ended a war that was going to end me. You did it on terms I would never have had the courage to set. I owe you my life. I owe you my mother's peace of mind. I owe you, frankly, every meal I have eaten in 5 years, because I have been eating wondering whether you were eating, and now I know that you are." She looked at him. "Junseo," she said. "Yes. I am not the girl you met in that kitchen. I know. I am not the girl who got in your car in Seongbuk. I know. I am also," she said, "not over you." He went very still. "I do not need you," she said. "I want to be very clear about that. I have a restaurant. I have a mother who is alive. I have a brother in business school. I have a name in a city that has, finally, learned to say it right. I do not need you. I am not for sale. I am not a reward. I am not, at any price, going back to being a secret. I would not ask you to be." "Then ask me," she said, "what you came here to ask." He looked at her. He took a breath. "Selah Whitmore," he said, "I would like to know you, as an equal, in public, with my whole face, for as long as you will allow it, with the understanding that you can end it at any time, for any reason, and that anything I have ever paid for or arranged in your life is yours regardless. I am not buying anything. I have nothing left to buy with. I am asking." She looked at him. She thought about a kitchen at 2 a.m. She thought about a parking garage. She thought about 5 years of silence faithfully kept. She thought about choice. "Okay," she said. He stared at her. "Okay?" "Okay. Dinner. Saturday. 8 p.m. I pick the restaurant. You pay for yours, I pay for mine. We do this slowly. We do this in front of people. We do this with my mother knowing your name, and your mother knowing mine, and no envelopes, and no LLCs, and no men with motorcycles, and we see what we are when we are choosing each other instead of fleeing from somebody else. Okay?" He smiled. It was the same smile from the kitchen. Tired, honest, surprisingly young. "Okay," he said. She stood up. She picked up her apron. She kissed him once on the corner of the mouth, a kiss that was a thank you and a beginning and a boundary all at once. Then she went back to the pass. He paid his check. He left a tip. He walked out of Lorraine's at 9:43 p.m. into a warm June night in Brooklyn, and he stood on Tompkins Avenue and exhaled for the first time in 5 years. Saturday came. They had dinner. They had another. They had a year of them. The penthouse in Seoul. The dead men on the marble. The wedding ring on her finger. That was 18 months later. And it was, in the end, the easiest decision either of them ever made. Because by then, they had built the thing love is actually made out of. Not rescue, not silence, not envelopes. Choosing, out loud, every single day. So here's the question I asked you to hold. At the very beginning, when the rain was coming down on Itaewon, and a girl with $17 was about to shake the hand of a man she did not yet know enough to fear. What is your dignity worth in cash? Selah Whitmore answered that question twice. The first time, in a kitchen at 2 a.m., she said, $50,000 for 1 week, public only, separate bedrooms. I walk on Friday. And she meant every word. The second time, in a courthouse in Lower Manhattan, she said, "Nothing. My dignity is not for sale. Not to my father. Not to a Korean billionaire. Not to a federal prosecutor. Not even to the man I love. My dignity comes with me. It is the one thing I do not negotiate." Between those two answers, she became herself. She did not get a fairy tale ending. She got something better. She got herself back. She got a mother who lived. She got a brother who graduated. She got a restaurant in Bed-Stuy with her own name on the lees. She got a James Beard nomination. And then, 3 years later, the win. She got a husband who chose her, in public, with his whole face, after she had already chosen herself. She got the life that the girl on the floor of Maison Gill could not have imagined, because that girl was too tired to imagine anything except getting up off the floor. If this story moved you tonight, if you saw yourself in Selah, or in her mother, or in the woman you used to be before you figured out the difference between love and storage, do me one favor. Drop a comment and tell me the moment you set the terms. The moment you stopped paying somebody else's bill with your own life. The moment you said, no more. From here, I balance the books, with both hands, with my eyes open. Share this story with the woman in your life who needs to hear it. Subscribe so the next one finds you. And remember, wherever you are tonight, whatever kitchen you're scrubbing, whatever envelope you're being offered, you are allowed to say yes on your own terms, and you are allowed to walk on Friday, and you are allowed to come back 5 years later as the woman who sets the table. Selah Whitmore did not get rescued. She got free. And freedom, it turns out, is the only love story worth telling.